What's good, everybody? Welcome to season 2 of Cultural Canvases, Black Men in Fine Art and Creative Spaces. I'm your host, Badir McCleary of ArtAboveReality, and I'm super happy to start this season off with somebody that I admire, somebody that's an amazing creative, somebody that's a brilliant thinker, and somebody that just always sets the mic on fire on the stage and also in podcast clubhouse situations anytime he steps on. The brother Black Dave, man. First of all, I just want to thank you for just being a part of this, man. And just over the years, your knowledge, your intensity, your access has made me, has kind of changed me in a sense, bro, to where um, your accessibility and that accessibility alongside knowledge has made me a little bit more accessible with being able to show that I know shit too. You know what I mean? And be able to share it with people. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I've got from your greatness, my brother. And again, thank you for being here.
No, man, I'm excited. It's been a while since I've been able to talk with a person, especially when it comes to like sharing information. So I'm excited to just dive in, and it's been a little bit since we've like talk.
Yes,
So
sir.
this is actually, I feel like, the perfect place for it.
Yeah, man. Like one of the things, and I always tell folks anytime they've brought up anything Web3, anything Clubhouse, anything that has anything the digital sphere, monetization, smart contracts, anything like that. There's three names I've always brought up: Black Dave, Natalie Crew, and Eric Spivak, Motivate. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of start with is when I first came across of the lore of Black Dave, it was pretty much a profile pic. No one knew who this mysterious Black Dave was. No one knew where he came from. He just was dropping knowledge every time he got up on the stage. So can you give folks a little bit of a background of your history as a creative and as a man growing up in these in these crazy streets?
Yeah. So what's funny about all of that, like Web3, Clubhouse, et cetera, is I came up just like a regular computer nerd, gamer, whatever. Um, and I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. And something really funny about being Black Dave is up in New York, there is another Black Dave that exists who also skateboards, and I used to skate, who also is a rapper, and I rap, and like does almost all the same things I do, but he was like a little bit more popular than me. I've been going by Black Dave Mark II recently as
Mm,
like a kind of like as a way to differentiate myself, but also a way to poke fun at the other Black Dave because the Mark II is like the updated version.
yeah.
Um, I got started making things probably in high school. In 2005, I started like playing bass in punk and hardcore bands with my friends.
Yeah.
And then I started getting into like music production. I made like this electronic music hardcore fusion band with one of my friends who played like jazz piano. Uh, and then from there, I think all I was interested in was trying to figure out how to make things that I thought was cool. So like it, especially when you're someone who's always lived in big cities or always goes to big cities, it's easy to encounter all the things that you think are cool. So I
Hmm.
didn't get into streetwear until like 2005, when I lived in Jacksonville, Florida with my grandma. And like, I didn't even start a clothing brand until 2010. I didn't start collecting sneakers until like 2012. I didn't start rapping until like 2014. And my goal has always just been like, what do I think is really cool? I just want to learn how to do that. And so um, I would learn computer programming because I wanted to make a video game. I would learn music production because I wanted to make music. I would learn how to get into screen printing because I wanted to start a streetwear brand. I learned how to DJ because I wanted to throw parties. I learned like all this stuff because I was seeing things online that were just like super cool. I was uh I was Tumblr aged, so I was the right age for Tumblr, and
Yeah.
you can argue that all the black people who matter in pop culture came from Tumblr.
They always say that.
Um, yeah, and so I was definitely more of a I wasn't a participant, but I was watching and I was around. So I'm still really inspired by all those things. And even the version of me now, I say that I just want to continue the story of all those people who inspired me. You know, talking about like Virgil Abloh or like Tyler the Creator or Kanye or Kid Cudi or whatever, and how all those people really took, I would say, like the outside of the stereotype of being black in America, whether it was skateboarding or skinny jeans or wearing pink or whatever it might be. I was kind of one of those guys, and for me, I was really into anime. I'm still really into anime. Anime is the
Yeah.
cornerstone of my inspiration, and so for me, that was always my thing. Was like I'm really into anime, and especially back then, it wasn't a traditionally black cool thing, and so for me, it's just been about mixing all the things I love, anime, streetwear, rap music, sneakers, fashion, and just trying to make as many cool things and experiences as I can around that. And yeah.
Yeah, like that's so interesting because I think we have like the same childhood. I think I think as a young black kid, we all have different friends that we can you know I guess poke at different interests. You know what I mean? Like when you mention anime, I think of my homie Dwayne. We call him Weez, and he put me on to like Sword Art Online. You know what I mean? And like
Hmm.
a bunch of other stuff. And he's a hardcore anime like brother, and he is also a brother that got me understanding how to program Swift. He taught me my first computer language, and this is a person from the hood too. And I have homies that are good at carpentry, good at basketball, good at things. So it's like it's real interesting as a young black kid how we're tied to all these super cool things that somehow are not cool when they come to the public eye. When we
Hmm.
get into school and you try to you got to wear all the cool sneakers and all that, but being a dope programmer is not cool anymore. Having a dope comic book collection isn't cool anymore. Doing a kickflip or doing all that isn't cool. When these days it has switched, but growing up in that era, it almost was like being smart wasn't cool. Um, but that seems to have flipped, I think, because of people like you, people like others that have made that that connection between what's cool and what's smart, and kind of, bridge them to make them in one, you know what I mean? And, I think if any kid would look at YouTube today and see a young black creator, and it made me think of is this one brother, Big Manny, from London. He does science and he's like hardcore hood dude, just does science, talks about that, but that's relatable. And I think that's one of those things that like it just I know I just went off on a little tangent, but that just makes me feel great about the state of young black kids. You know what I mean? I was a kid that, like you said, I wanted to do cool stuff, but I guess I had a debate about what's cool to my friends, what's cool to my parents, and what's cool to me.
That was what's funny about that. I would say is like I remember coming up and my grandma was really like, "You got to go to college for computer programming. You're so smart on computers. Like that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do." And I got in college and and I was doing computer programming. My big goal was to make a 3D Pokemon game. We have that
Mm,
now, but we didn't
hmm.
have that back then.
Didn't have it then. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got into it. I was making websites for like the locals and stuff for a living, just doing stuff like that. And I got into a web design class in college, and my teacher just kept failing me. Like I failed the class twice, and I was like, "Is there a different professor?" Like something. I was like, "I make websites for a living, and
Yeah.
this professor is telling me that what I'm doing is wrong, but I am doing what I do for a living." And there wasn't one, so now I have a degree in marketing. Is the short version of that. But it's I think what's cool about this era of kids, especially, is they're fine doing whatever they want. I think when we were coming up, it was so defined to what we were like allowed to do, quote unquote, right? Like
Yeah.
if you did something, it wasn't a masculine activity, it was a white person's activity. It was like not cool. You were a nerd, you were lame, whatever. I think the tough part was just trying to find those inspirations early on. And so I think, like, just to bring this back one more time, like Tumblr was so sick. Like you were like, oh, there are people who live in New York City who are into fashion, who are directing music
Yeah.
videos, who are like really changing culture and are skateboarding and are doing all these playing in bands, like all this stuff. And and a lot of times you find out that like black people are always like at the foundation of all of these different cultures. You're like, oh, so like there was a black person here. Oh, black people were in punk rock. Black people were in this and that. But I think it's really tough because the media at the time was really pushing a narrative of what blackness was, and I think it took a long time for I guess everyone to catch up and for there to be enough inspirations out there. It took Kanye getting famous enough. It took Pharrell getting famous enough to be able to convince kids that it was cool to skate, or convince kids that it was cool to like dress a certain way or listen to a certain type of music or be inspired by different things. And so I think that's just like the key right now is just like, how can we continue to push being ourselves to the max? It's like, do you like something? Do it. Whatever it is, do it. We don't even want to tell you that the thing you're doing is cool or not. We just want to tell you that if you want to do it, do it. And I think that's like the real goal. And that's what I feel like everyone who inspires me pushes. It's like, just do what you want to do. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what it is, just do it.
Hell yeah, and it's really dope. I was actually you mentioned Pharrell. One of my favorite films of right now is just Brick by Brick, the Lego one. I mean, I think that is like the dopest creative, documentary like ever right now. Um, and it also made me think of one kids, because as a kid, having Lego, even as an adult, having Lego. My friends still have Legos. We all have Legos. Um, but also like the marketing, how are kids seeing this marketing? How has the marketing changed to where you'll get whole movies that are campaigns now, starting with like Toy Story, then you get Despicable Me, and now you get someone from that culture, the hip hop culture, like Pharrell, who is not the quote unquote you know hood guy, the whatever, but he is one of the greatest artists that we have, channeling that marketing, with the kid. I mean, he's even started with Despicable Me, bringing it, merging it into Brick by Brick. How does the kid in you see the or view that marketing?
You know, what's interesting about that is where I'm from in Charleston, I lived in a black neighborhood, but I went to a white school.
Hmm.
And so you would see kids of all types. And I was talking to someone recently about, actually, I wasn't talking, I was writing. I've been doing the artist way. And in the artist way, you write 3 pages every morning. And I'm not a journaling type, but I was writing about how having come from something that was a bit more diverse, where I was always able to do whatever I wanted because there's like a built-in audacity of whiteness,
Mm.
where they're just like, oh, I'm gonna
Mm.
just do whatever I'm doing. I didn't run into a lot of this idea of being black blocking me from doing things until I was probably in my 20s. Um, and I feel like as a kid, you didn't realize, like, you just didn't realize that, like, everything that's in front of you that you're interested in, it's cool. Just do it. It's cool. Just do it. I remember getting into skateboarding, and one of my neighbors had taught me how to ollie, and it was this black kid, and I started skating, and I was the only black kid I ever saw skateboarding, while a black person taught me how to do my first skateboarding trick.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so interesting. I think like looking at how all of us are taking the things that inspired us coming up and all the things that we thought were important to us. And now we're telling new stories using those same tools. Like with the Lego movie, they made like 7 new skin tones of
Yeah.
Legos.
Yeah.
And so it's like we are impacting the things that impacted us. And now that impact is going to impact the next. And so to me, I think seeing that kind of marketing happening now is going to be so important for kids in the future where they're like, if you think about someone who's like 13 right now, right? They don't really play with Legos anymore. So they're not going to see the impact of all of these different skin tones of Legos, but like a 4-year-old will. And so
Yeah.
when that 4-year-old is 20 and they're deciding that they want to be a creative person or do whatever they want to do in life, they've always come up seeing everybody doing it. And so it's like, even looking at, and I know this is like a controversial topic, but like looking at like how the Little Mermaid was one of the Bailey sisters, looking at how they
Yep.
like recast all these characters. It's
Yep.
it's like I understand that from like a story context, these things aren't important, or these things are like they ruin the story, quote unquote. But on the
Hmm.
other side of that, it's inspiring the next generation of kids because we
Yes.
we are moving definitely towards a more um, just like a more open society as far as like racing stuff goes. It's like, there are people who are concerned about uh the death of the white man. There are people who think the same thing
Yeah.
when it comes to blackness or any race. And I think that the diversity that we're coming up on, it's going to be way more important to have these diverse stories than it is to have these like lore accurate stories, because
Yeah.
people need to be able to see themselves in things, and we need to create more stories where people can see themselves in things. So I'm just pumped to see this stuff like continue to push and we can
But
see
yeah.
ourselves in more things.
Like just adding on to that, like one of the things that really touches on that point, and I think was a real pivotal part in cultural filmmaking, was the Miles Morales Spider-Man. That not only, I mean, it hit harder that it was, animation based. You know what I mean? Because it, first of all, it took it right back to where you almost like was reading a comic book when you're in the theater. But secondly, it put no judgment for the most part in characters. When you put an actual person, like we talked about with Little Mermaid, you put a black person in a traditionally white character or an originally white character, it causes some uproar. But with the animation, to me, it just seemed like people felt like this was right. And it helped transition a little bit more. And it didn't hurt that Miles was cool as hell, and implemented all of those cultural things inside of his character naturally in his character. It wasn't, over the top. It wasn't everything crazy. I think every kid of every race felt like Miles Morales. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was a crucial, crucial, crucial part of cultural filmmaking at that time, that, just like you said, it gave the future an idea of how they can see things differently. And when I see the marketing from that kid's perspective, when we talk about it again and seeing the Despicable Me, and knowing that Pharrell did the music, you can see, uh, Nikola Jokic doing different promos, as Gru and things like that. That's that's crossing those once, you know impenetrable barriers. And if people say, well, we can cross that and do that, then maybe we can come over here and do this. And that was one of the things that I thought was real cool about Clubhouse when we talked about that in the openings, that there were people from totally different industries that were just talking about random topics and found the kinship and built some really cool things about that. So I guess my next question would be is, how do you feel that the kinship through creativity has changed over the years? Because we're seeing much more collaboration than we're seeing competition, even though they try to make it seem like it's the other way.
I think we realized that, especially in this time period, competition helps the distribution channel more than it helps the creator. I saw a tweet today that said something along those lines. And this is true across all social, but this one was crypto related. Of course, it's like a platform, for instance, can allow me to create a work, and then they are making money from ads, from fees of sales, from all these different things. But what they're trying to do is have us as creators go harder in order to outsell other creators so that we make money. But whether or not I win or lose, the platform wins every time,
Wins. Yep.
every
Yep.
time. And so I think a lot of us are figuring that out. The jig is up. And so what's happening now is people are like, we could actually reach way more people if we just do stuff together. or if we just associate with each other. I
Yeah.
think like one of the biggest eras that really did that for me in music was the blog era. Finding out that
Mm-hmm.
all of them were friends, it
Yeah.
was like, oh, ASAP Rocky is friends with Schoolboy Q, who is friends with
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar, who is friends with Vince Staples, who is friends with Earl
Yeah.
Sweatshirt, who is friends with Mac Miller, who is friends with Nipsey Hussle, who is friends with, and you're like, oh, this is why music worked back then.
Worked. Yes.
And this is why music doesn't work now, because all they're doing is competing with each other, because that space, the music industry space, is based in competition. Independent music is based in collaboration.
Huge
So you're
change.
seeing a lot more independent artists do well, go on tour, build these huge organic fan bases, and then when it comes time to sign a deal, the labels actually have way less leverage than they've probably ever had.
Yes.
And so I think that it's, to me, such an interesting time to collaborate as opposed to work individually. I Anyone in Web3 will tell you I am I notoriously hate collaborating. I hate working with people. And and for me, it's not that I hate working with people, it's that I hate working with people without a similar vision or similar like level of vision. It's not even like I need you to see the exact idea I'm seeing. I just need you to see how big this idea can be.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
something that I think that's something that I don't want to say, you have to learn it more than anything else. You have to really realize that you can be, just to continue talking about him, Pharrell, right? Any of us have the capacity to be Pharrell if we work to be Pharrell.
Work.
But what
Yep.
ends up happening is you work with someone, and I'm like, man, I think I could be as big as Pharrell, and they're like, Pharrell, really?
Yeah.
And
Like
I'm like, oh yeah, no, okay, you're
Yeah.
not the guy I should be doing this with, because I'm trying to be Pharrell, and if you're not, then how are we going to work together? And
Yeah.
so I think like that's actually become one of the hardest parts, but I think that we're getting more and more into this, especially as we see like the younger kids, the Gen Z kids, like saying, you know what, I'm not gonna go to college. I'm gonna be 19. I'm gonna use AI to code an app. I'm gonna make $4 million this year, and then I'm gonna take a break, and then I'm gonna figure out what I want to do with life. And it's like, first of all, it's crazy that that's a thing.
Yeah.
Millennials, it's so funny. All my friends are like, so like, can I do an AI thing and like do whatever? And then like, I remember like a few years ago, it was like, well, I mean, these girls are making a lot of money on OnlyFans. I wonder if I could do
Man,
something
yep.
like that. It's
Yep.
like, it's too late for us. We love working, quote unquote, too much. We love like our college degrees too much. And like,
Yeah.
if we work in some field that doesn't use our $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 degree, then we feel like we messed up in life. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel like you have to really find ways to continue to stay youthful in that way, where you're
Yeah.
seeing these kids who you'll see Ice Spice, and she's like, oh, I could be as big as Nicki Minaj. She's like, you can't even drink alcohol yet. What are you thinking about being as big as Nicki Minaj for? Like, but that's a thing, and that's like,
That's the thing.
that's what's
Yeah.
really exciting for me, is like trying to not only collaborating with people, but especially collaborating with people with the same scale of vision as me, because
Yeah.
that means that I could probably achieve the scale that I'm looking for with a bunch of people who also see it.
That's a fact. And one of the people that I think embody that in this generation right now is La Russell. So
Hmm.
like that brother drops consistently, constantly, every day, and it's always what he wants to do. I think
Hmm.
when we think about these different eras, I think of, WWE, like the Attitude Era and all this type of stuff. Like we're in this creator era. And I think he's one of those people that symbolizes the independent, creativity in this era, especially musically. Like it just seems like this brother just goes in and has fun, and whatever comes out, it exudes itself in the music, in the videos, in the people that he collaborates with. That's why I agree with you. You said collaboration is important, because it seems like every time I see the next video, it's a level up. He'll have Wiz Khalifa, then he'll have Busta, then he'll have Snoop, and I'm just like, damn, this is something dope to watch. And then going back to Pharrell, with Brick by Brick, you would see like how Pusha T was his man's. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And he met Missy in school and Timbo and them in school, and
Yeah, yeah.
Teddy Riley come to the neighborhood, and like how these different parts of leveling up happen throughout life. um, I think that the youth are starting to understand that there is possibility in that now. It used to be a pipe dream, 80s, 90s kids coming up like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to do this and that. They probably like, man, sit your ass down. You better get something
Exactly.
to fall back on. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
now they're falling back on YouTube. They're falling back on Web3. Web3, we know, have changed so many people's lives. 7-year-old kids have sold over $100,000 in, NFTs, and, have created ideas for platforms, have created apps, like you've said, to where they're ushering in a new wave of entrepreneur. I always, think about sometimes like, all right, creative wise, where do child labor laws come in at? Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like like if you couldn't get a job at the factory to feed your family, how are you old enough to pay taxes in the YouTube economy? You know what I mean? Like, it made me think about that, and also just that, are we seeing a upending of traditional hierarchy? Has the creator economy flipped who is the breadwinner, in our creative society? Because, in fine art, it's not the gallery anymore. It's
Hmm.
now the artist or the artist agent, in some cases. So how do you see the changing of that space um, becoming a benefit or a drawback for today's creator?
I think there's two sides to it, right? If you look at any of these industries, whether it's fine art, whether it's music, whether it's fashion or whatever, there's an infrastructure that comes with playing the game, quote unquote, right? Whether that is your ability to get into galleries and museums, whether it's your ability to get a song on the radio or get the front page on Apple Music, whether it's your ability to get on the front page of Essence or Hypebeast or whatever, there are these systems that exist that get you into these sort of places that you feel like matter. What I have been finding more, and something I've been learning a lot as a creator, especially in the last couple of years, I recently learned a lot about the dark forest theory that Yancey Strickler, he's like the co-founder of Kickstarter, runs something called Meta Label Now. It's this idea that people actually exist in these dark forests as opposed to a broader internet, and that
Mm,
everyone ventures into these dark forests to find the things that they want instead of going into the world at large. So what would essentially end up happening is I would build a fan base. We can use LaRussell here, right? Like LaRussell would build a fan base. People would go into LaRussell's world, and then LaRussell's world would connect to other worlds. I call them the
mhm,
network of dark forests.
mhm,
Um, and this is actually the way that I think a lot of work is happening now. If you look at streaming, right? All of these streamers are part of crews. You have Kai Snap with Amp, you have FaZe Clan, you have all these different groups of kids who all just pump each other up. And
mhm,
they're their own sort of dark forest. And then you can even break that down even further, where the collective is the forest, but then there are smaller forests inside of it. And so to me, what I think is really happening is everyone is being able to find ways to sustain themselves in these smaller ideas. And on the other side of that, in the larger industries, they aren't changing much, right? Like whether it's like something as simple as like when my mom goes to work and hasn't gotten a raise in a while, or one of my friends works a regular job and it's like the same thing every day, versus like my friends who work in film and are making, $160 an hour to do whatever it is, and then they can move into something independent and then be able to produce that and get a different percentage and make something that they can sell and blah 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 blah. Like the world is definitely changing in that way. I think that the only thing that the industries, quote unquote, at large have is that infrastructure. And I think what's gonna happen, and it's already happening, is that the intermediaries within those infrastructures, like a PR company, like a creative agency or whatever, they're gonna just go to the artist directly and say, hey, don't sign a deal, work
mhm.
with us, we'll make you popular. Don't sign a deal, work with us, we'll get you that music video. Work with us, we'll get you in the gallery. And I'm super into that. I think that, with music especially, there were a ton of layoffs in the last couple of years.
Oh yeah,
And
tons.
and so many. And what I've been hearing from a lot of people in the music industry is that they're all just going to start their own agencies. They
Mm-hmm.
already know how to make an artist successful. So they'll just work together. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
labels, you don't need us. We'll just do what we did for people independently. And I think that that's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I think we're at the very very beginning of it.
Yeah.
And I think looking at something like a lyrical lemonade, for instance, which I know has label support, but looking at that and how he was just like, I'm going to shoot videos for people and I'm going to build a community, and the people in the community love the artists that I work with, and sometimes when I work with an artist, that artist blows up, and that's it. And I think
That's
that's
it.
going to
Yep.
happen so much more. We're going to be looking at so many more individuals for that sort of signal. I think we got really used to looking to the industry for those signals, but now we're looking to players in that industry for those signals, and I'm super pumped.
That's a super super dope take, and it makes me think of, because you're right, like there are these super siloed groups, like me and my friend was talking the other night, and they were talking like, like how there's all of these different events and shows and stuff now, like, back in the 80s and 90s there wasn't, a convention for people that like, small plants or whatever, you know what I mean, like, but now you can
Hmm.
find a convention for anything, anything. You can go to a meetup. There's meetup apps for those small silos of people who like to do specific things, and we look at that on a larger scale. I can see like profits of what people would say, oh, this company generate 500 billion, 200 billion, but one small silo might generate 50 million but might give out a better product. I see, Discord channels becoming whole companies, as they have, things
Yes.
like Pizza Dow, things of those nature. We'll see, these small creators make things, and we talked about tokenization, to where that community operates in a Star Wars like economy. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Are we at the point to where creatively we're creating borders because of what we like?
I think what's interesting about that is there's always an overlap, right? Like, it's just about finding the proper people for the overlaps or the proper channels for the overlaps. So I think a lot about Megan Thee Stallion and how she's a
Mm,
huge anime fan, but she's also
mhm.
a rapper. And
Yes.
so what ends up happening is people who like rap will see Megan Thee Stallion on the cover of, I think she was on the cover of Paper Magazine dressed as Todoroki from My Hero Academia, right? And and so people see the outfit and like, this is a crazy outfit. And then it goes, oh, did you know that was inspired by this anime called My Hero Academia, which is one of the top 5 ranked anime on my anime list? And then they're like, oh wow, I should watch that. And then like you do that, you turn around, that show's on Adult Swim. So next thing you know, you're like, oh, Meg like that, so I'm gonna watch that. And then you
Yeah.
you get into all these things. And I think brands do this a lot. Like if you think about Ice Spice, Nicki Minaj in the Barbie movie, Billie Eilish she won a Grammy off the song from the Barbie movie that she did, and all these different people who are like creating these sort of crossover vibes. I think the thing that's becoming really tough is that there are so many tools that make us as creators have to bounce around. And as opposed to there being like one small set of tools that everyone uses, there is this massive tools that we are using for a variety of different reasons. So I might use a platform that specializes in Web3. So then that means only people who are into crypto can use this
Use.
effectively.
Yep.
And there are a lot of tools that exist that allow people to buy things with crypto using their credit card. But there are a lot of people who will never put their credit card into something crypto related.
Yep.
And I get it. I feel you. And
Yeah.
so, but on the other side of that, if I'm putting my music, let's say, on a more traditional platform, no one knows who I am. I'm Black Dave from NFTs. I'm not Black Dave from South Carolina. You know what I'm saying? And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, that barrier exists. And if there were a smaller set of tools that everyone used, where my value on one side was be able to be seen from the other, there's a possibility that something might happen. And I think adjacent to that, I think bringing up Discord, this is perfect. I did a video about this. I went into the Discord for the group Earth Gang, and it's a duo. I guess a duo is a group still technically, but um, I went to their Discord server and I was thinking about how we're going to start seeing Discord server networks. Remember
Mm-hmm.
back in the early days of blogging, you had a blog roll and it was like all the blogs that
Yes.
you really liked. I
Yeah.
think we're going
Yep.
to end
Yep.
up in places like that where you'll join a Discord server for a genre of music or for a type of person, and then there's a list of Discord servers for artists in that genre. And I think right now we're still trying to figure out how to break down these barriers and these boundaries. But I think we're on the way. I feel like we're in this really interesting technological time, especially when it comes to AI, especially when it comes to crypto, where we're able to do all these different things. So, like for instance, I can make a crypto coin, and when people buy and sell my crypto coin, I make money off of the fees of those transactions, like a credit card company does when you swipe their card, right? But anyone can make a crypto coin for themselves in theory. And this is not like a crypto sales pitch. So I know that I know that people don't want to use it, and I'm not trying to convince anyone to use it. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
But like any artist can make one, right? And then we can just start selling things in each other's money, just the same way that we would around the world if we did a currency transfer. And so I think that with something like crypto, with things like Discord servers that will aggregate other Discord servers and things like that, we're going to move towards there being a lot less borders. But I think right now we're a little bit early and there are so many tools and we need to see more winners. And once we have a few winners, then everyone's going to gravitate towards those and we're going to figure it out. I think like when you look at music, Bandcamp became one of those winners for independent music. And so everyone was like, oh, yeah, my music's on Bandcamp. You can buy it on Bandcamp. You can buy it on Bandcamp. You can buy it on Bandcamp. People weren't even pushing. The iTunes store still exists. Amazon store still exists. You can still buy music in places. But we were like, oh, go on Bandcamp, go on Bandcamp, go on Bandcamp. And so I think we're going to start seeing more winners like that when it comes to community building, when it
Yeah.
comes to engagement, when it comes to fans, when it comes to all those things, because we keep building tools for creators and we don't build enough tools for consumers. And I think people are starting to catch on that we need more tools for consumers.
Yeah. And I think like on the music side, like when you were saying, like, when you're dropping stuff with the anime alignment, and when Latasha was dropping stuff, and when people like I would hate that it was always connected to a platform. You know what I mean? Even when Nas dropped, the ownership of Rare, and I forgot the other song.
But
Um,
yeah, I
it
remember
it
that.
always just felt like, why do I have to go to this platform to get it? Why am I not buying it directly from Nas or Mass
Hmm.
Appeal? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like,
Doesn't it feel like the platform is more important than the thing that it's
yes,
on?
that's exactly the point I was getting to.
My
To
bad. I
where
didn't mean
it's
to
like,
jump you. Sorry.
no, 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 no. No, you're perfect. You're perfect, because like that just shows we're aligned, because we know, because I was like, damn, like, why do I have to go? And mind you, these platforms, they do a great job. I've met some great people working at them, with some great ideas. But I've always wondered, like, there needs to be more education on creating, or self maintaining, contracts, the distribution and things like that in the music, because they're making these platforms, like you say, they're making them go crazy. And these transaction fees, we talked about gas fees over time, all of that, like, it made these people a hell of a lot of money just off the activity. When if that would have went directly, like if you were selling them out the trunk, or Latasha was selling them out the trunk like Master P, it would have been a totally different come up, in a way that, you know, people, for one, might not have saw, because not everybody saw Master P actually come up. They saw when he was there,
Hmm.
but they never really saw when he was actually outside in New Orleans out the trunk with it. Um, I think that kind of takes away from people actually really understanding the music. Because if it just goes right to a platform, people say, oh, instead of saying Dave's music is dope, how did Dave get on that platform? Becomes the question, or it becomes the thought.
Absolutely.
It's not how do I download this? How do I get it? How do I do this and that? It becomes, how did he get on there? Because I remember seeing like when you drop something, when Latasha dropped something, and a couple other people dropped something on the music side, the question everybody asked was, is that platform taking more artists?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't like, yo, how do I put money on my, my wallet to get this? What's the easiest transfer? How much gas fees does it take to buy this? It was, how do I get on that platform? How do I just get on the marketing side of this instead of being able to actually sell the damn piece? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
being on, I forgot which one it was. It wasn't Rare, but what was the one that was like the hot one for like 3 weeks that everybody was trying to get on and it just somehow disappeared?
Foundation,
Not Foundation. It
not
was
Foundation.
it
Known
was
Origin, super
not
rare.
known, or not Super Rare. What was the, oh man?
There's so many. Zora was like that. Zora was closed before it was open. Um,
Yeah, sure was.
Catalog, uh,
Oh
Catalog's
my
still a bit
gosh.
closed. There's a bunch. There's a bunch.
But it was one that like for like maybe like a month or two, it was dropping everybody's,
Nifty
hot thing.
Gateway.
Nifty Gateway. That's what it was. It was dropping everybody's hot thing to where it was like, it didn't even matter what art was coming off of it.
Mm-hmm.
It just was like, oh, this is a new one. I have to get it because it seems like their pieces are what's hot and are pieces that are going to, have an ROI for me. I guess my question in this is, as a creator, how do you direct people directly to a checkpoint that solely serves the artist and the artist community without having to literally have the platform as an exchange of currency?
So first, one of my favorite phrases I used to say about Nifty Gateway was a new millionaire every week. Because
Every week,
every week someone was
every
making
week.
$1 million. Every week an artist was making $1 million on there. I'm actually going to Beeple Studios tomorrow. He's the one
Nice.
who made 69 million. He lives
Mm-hmm.
here. He lives in Charleston,
Oh,
so
People's dope.
he's
I got
yeah.
invited to the opening that one time, but I had to do something else, and I got still. Matter of fact, I'm gonna take a trip to South Carolina one of these weekends and
Come
just come
on
kick it and just
down.
see. Yeah, I'm gonna come
Yeah,
down. But yeah, sorry to
yeah.
cut you off, brother.
No, no, no. It's fine. I just that was like my aside. Just Beeple lives here. But I think for me, the tricks to directing people to me as opposed to platforms has been having to build things that don't have anything to do with platforms. So like building my own website. Blackdave.xyz is my current website. I've had a million different URLs, but like you go there and it's just cover arts. It's just the covers to my music. It has nothing to do with NFT platforms. You can click certain songs and it takes you to an NFT platform. You can
Mm-hmm.
click certain songs, it takes you to Bandcamp. You can click certain things, it takes you to Apple Music, Spotify, etc. The only thing that I've been able to find is, despite Web3 being this place where, as long as you have access to the smart contract, or not even access, as long as you know the address of the smart contract, you can display it anywhere.
Yep.
Is no one built tools for us to display them anywhere. So we ended up having to use our own things to
Yeah.
direct you back to the place to get the thing. And so for me, it's been that. For me,
Mm-hmm.
it's been, how do I build a Black Dave focused community? I have an NFT called Black Dave Token. It costs like $1 to get one, and the whole point of it is that if you want to support what I'm doing, just buy a bunch of these. There are a million of them, literally a million of them. Just buy a bunch. Every month, if you still support me, spend $20 more, spend $30 more. I'm not going to give you anything, but if you see the vision and you rock with what I'm doing, do that. I ended
Yeah.
up making a group chat for everyone who's bought at least one. And
Yeah, I was like,
it's one
that was the Discord one, right? Because I was
so
in I
yeah,
was
so
in
I
the
have the
Discord one.
Discord.
Yeah.
It's separate. It's separate. I
Oh,
have a
that's a different one.
Telegram
Okay.
chat. Yeah. And it's like, people in music say it's like one of the highest signal music Web3 spaces on the internet. But it's not like a thing that I made. It's not a chat that I made for any reason other than me thinking that people were gonna say, "Hey, Dave, it's really audacious of you to say give me money and not do anything for it." That's what
Yeah.
I thought the chat was gonna be, but it was
Yeah.
actually people who aligned with what I was thinking and how I was moving, and so it's become this really cool chat. And I still have my Discord server. I don't use it as much. And I remember building a community there, and it was super useful as well.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do. I think what's happening is we came from a time where you would just put your stuff online, people would see it, and then they would buy it or interact with it or whatever. Algorithms ruined it,
Yeah.
ads ruined it, all of that ruined it. So now we are trying to direct people to places that the algorithm doesn't control.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the game, right? So it's like, okay, guys, like, did you see my Instagram post? Did you click the link that takes you to a Discord server? Did you click the link that signed up for an email list? Did you click the link that took you to a Telegram chat or whatever? Because that's the only way anyone's going to see anything we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine a world where we are able to go back successfully. I think we've gone too far in one direction. These platforms have made too much money. And let's
Yeah.
say, for instance, a proper Instagram clone comes out that doesn't use an algorithm, that isn't running crazy on ad revenue. Meta's just going to buy it. And then they're just going to
Yeah.
keep running Instagram. So
Yeah.
that's what's going to end up happening. Or they're going to run some campaign that squashes your campaign. You can't link out to Substack on Twitter because Twitter has its own long form content thing. That's just what they're going to do. And so the key is doing your best to get people off platform and into places you control. And it's funny because I'm naming a bunch of other companies, but I
Yeah.
think that these companies value not having algorithmic control and not taking away people from the things that they want to see. Like, why are companies that I follow on Instagram having to send me ads so I can
Yeah.
see their posts? It doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
so that's the world that we're in. And I think it's just, control is key.
How important is coding to have in your toolbox for the next generation of creator, or the
I think
understanding of code, I should say?
that's exactly what I was going to say. The
Yeah.
understanding is key.
Yeah.
I remember my first couple of years of programming, I did very little coding. We learned C++ year one.
Yeah.
I was learning some HTML, CSS. But what we were actually doing was what they would call pseudocoding, which
Mhm.
was like
Mhm.
you would just like write how it works. You wouldn't write the code, you would just
Yep.
write the flow of the code.
Yep.
And I think understanding that is way more important than knowing how to code. Not that knowing how to code isn't important. I I have been over the last couple of months using AI to code so many things,
Yeah.
and because I can look at code and understand what's happening, I
Mhm.
can have an idea of where things might be going wrong or
Yeah.
where things are important or what I can change by hand to make what I want. And
Yeah.
I think what's gonna end up happening is obviously AI is gonna get better, but I don't think AI is going to replace people who don't know how to code. I think
I agree.
AI is only supercharged by people who know how to code.
I
Um,
totally agree.
and and
Even
I
on the creative side too, not to cut you off, I'm sorry. With
no,
like
please.
people who, like, if you have some history in painting, if you have some history in photography, if you have history in 3D world building, that's the greatest baseline. Like, people think that, you're just going to jump right in and just have these, you know, great, prompts and start to do things. Like, no, those are based in actual thought, you know, thought knowledges and thought, not thought, not tripping, just thought sessions that you're having with yourself on how you want to build these to where you can get to the point where you can actually write out the prompt. People
Hmm.
think it's just like, okay, type, give me a cat riding on, a spaceship and thing, but it doesn't come out the way you want because you don't have the attributes of detail. You're not
Hmm.
understanding, I want it to look like this, I want it to have this part of it, I want it to bring, like, there's so much more that goes into understanding how you get the result than actually doing the result. That's when I realized a project manager was so crucial to project delivery, because
Hmm.
it's like they might not know how to, write the code, they might not know how to form the database, they might not go pick up paints, they might not sell the artwork, but they know how to get around all of that, and they know what the result in each step should look like and what it should be.
Hmm. I think the word that I always think about with this is language. Like,
Mhm.
you have to have the language in order to really create something great, right? Like, you'll hear fashion designers talk about their design language. You'll hear artists talk about their language. You'll hear musicians talk about their language. And it's not so much that the language is the words that they're using, but language is the way that they describe what they're trying to do. I've
Yeah.
been I've been hyper focused on language myself lately, as I like move into my next era of music, and really just trying to pinpoint words that I love to hear when describing my work. And so I'm obsessed. I hate this because this is like the most cliche concept, but like, I'm obsessed with juxtaposition right now. I make rock music and rap music at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I make anime music and fashion music at the same time. I am trying to do something loud and soft at the same time, chaotic and calm at the same time. And so like when I think about the language that I need, I hope that people recognize juxtaposition in my work. And there are people who they know the word juxtaposition exists, and they say, okay, well, if I make something black, then I just need to make something white, and that's juxtaposition. It's like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. It's so much more than that, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think what's happening with AI especially is people don't have the language, they don't have the taste, they don't have the foresight. I remember I was on a podcast. I actually sent it to my friend earlier, it's like 6 months ago. And this was when video AI was becoming like a thing. And I
Yeah.
was like, the thing about AI videos and turning them into short films or films, whatever, is that you still have to be a good storyteller.
Yeah.
You still have to understand pacing. You still have to
Yeah.
understand like all these things that
Framing,
still
all that stuff.
that
Yeah.
make it good. If you
Yeah.
don't understand the things that make something good, a prompt is not going to save you. And we see that
Facts.
a lot with I almost said something earlier because earlier today on the internet, not in this conversation, but in the last couple of days, ChatGPT had a big update. Everyone's been making those Studio Ghibli style images. Hayao
Yes.
Miyazaki hates AI. He's the last man drawing on paper in the anime
Yeah.
industry. And and looking at it, all of these designers are so upset. All of these artists are so upset. And I'm like, do you not know what sets you apart from someone who writes a prompt? I would never be worried about a guy who says, can you make this picture of me and my girlfriend Ghibli? Which I did, and I sent it to my girlfriend and she liked it. But I, as a designer, as an artist, would never
Yeah.
be worried about that guy. The
Yeah.
guy who's saying, can you Ghibli me and my girlfriend, is not your
Yeah.
client
Not your client
ever.
at all. Yeah.
Ever.
Yep.
What are
You're
you
right.
worried about? And so I've been seeing all this like, well, check out my portfolio that's done by a human. It's like, bro, you should say, check out my portfolio from someone who has taste, from someone who's into these
Yeah.
things, from someone who has experience with these things. I don't give a fuck whether a person
Yeah.
or not made
Yeah.
it. I give a
Exactly.
fuck whether it looks good. And that's all I need. And I think what's happening is people without taste are validating people without taste.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
people with taste are getting mad that people without taste are getting validated, not looking at the people who are validating them. It's
Yeah.
like, this has a
Yeah.
million views. Cool. Does anyone you look up to like that? No? Then why are you upset?
Why are you
And that
upset?
is my
Yep.
whole thing about like AI coming, and like, I think coding, I know we're talking about coding initially, is like understanding language, understanding how things work, understanding what makes something important. Those are the keys, not how good of a prompt can you type. Because if I build an app,
Yeah.
if I don't know how to like deal with user experience, app sucks every time.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yep.
matter. So
Yep.
it is what it is. That's my rant. Sorry for getting so loud.
No, I think it's apropos. I mean, because it's kind of like, how people were looking at, or speaking of, the NFTs are taking over the fine art world, argument back in 2020, 2021. When I was sitting there, it's like, this is never going to happen. It's like, what are y'all talking about? It's like, there is a consensus, like we talked about, those silos of people, that make this thing run. If they're not moving in that direction, then the art world is not moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way for people to usher in new thought, to usher in new ideas, to bring that. But if it's not, and it also kind of brings in the nifty gateway part of it too. If it's like, if it's not going to benefit the machine, it's not getting done.
Mm-hmm.
This has been an industry for hundreds of years because of that fact. People don't realize, like, us middle class people weren't supposed to be a part of this thing called fine art. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, they realized that talent was down in the middle and lower classes, and was able to elevate it up to being appreciated by the 1%, 10%, whatever, the high class, the glitterati, to where now it's almost like I hate the quote, but it's always funny. The inmates are running the asylum. People thought that that would happen because Sotheby's did that NFT sale, with a few things, and then Christie's eventually with the Beeple thing, went crazy. Um, People thought that that was ushering in a new era, of this is the new players. I remember, um, and it's been a while, but who was the kid, um ferocious
Mm-hmm.
ferocious I remember they were saying he was Picasso. And
Wow.
mind you, the young brother was doing his thing in his environment, getting the love for the works. He created an audience. She siloed an audience, of
Mm-hmm.
folks that worked for him. But then you had folks that were literally just cutting out pages out of history books and gluing, new people in after 6 to 8 months of work. When there were actual artists who have tried so many different mediums, and NFT, digital work, VR was just another medium on their belt, they were, looking at them as if they haven't accomplished anything. And it's just like, what's happening here? So I guess, my question to you in that regard is, how do we get people to actually not go crazy with something new, actually incorporate the past, the canon, when thinking about new technologies, to not just discard everything before 2025 when they're thinking about the creative space? How do we usher in that type of thinking?
I think it comes from both sides, right? I think on the one end, and this is something that we ran into a lot on Clubhouse, you would talk to the fine art community, the traditional art community, and they would say, "There's nothing good here. What are you guys doing over there on the
Yeah.
crypto side of things?"
Yep.
And you would look at the crypto side, and everyone would be like, "Wow, this is really great. I think we have an opportunity to really like push into the other side." And I remember going into one of those conversations on the fine art side and saying, "Hey, do any of you guys know anything about 3D design? Can someone tell me about a normal? Can someone
Yep.
tell me about a surface map? Can someone tell me about all these things that make 3D art good?" Because
Hmm.
if you're obsessing over a brushstroke, why are you not obsessing over a surface map? They're the same thing.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
they would be like, "Ugh, 3D is 3D. It's all computer aided." Da 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 da. And I remember thinking, "Oh, you just don't want things to change around you because you don't understand the new thing." And on the NFT side, they were saying, "Man, get all this old art out the way. We're coming with the new shit, and it's way better than all your stuff. We're making all this money. We're gonna change the world. Blah blah blah. It's all digitally authenticated, whatever, whatever." And it's like the answer is actually in the middle. I think something that's interesting about this time, and using Beeple as an example, like while he did make $69 million like through NFT sales, he's also got works that travel through art galleries and museums around the world. He premiered a work at the Gibbs Museum here in Charleston a few months ago. I went to the opening for it, and it's really sick. The stuff he makes is really cool, and and he treats his art practice like an art practice, not like an NFT practice. And I
Yes.
think what's happening is there are people who are treating NFTs like a practice in NFTs and not a practice in art. And then there are people in art who are looking at art as this thing that is designed to be closed off, which I do agree should be to a degree. I think when you open something up too much, the quality becomes indiscernible. You can't really tell what's going on. But I think that they're not opening it up wide enough to accept the new thing. So if you think about how long it took for street art or graffiti or any of that to become part of the fine art canon. And that
Mm-hmm.
stuff is not easy. Give
At
any
all.
of them a
At
paint
all.
can and they cannot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it took a long time for that to happen. And I think that's just what's happening again. And everyone's doing this thing where they go, we're not saying you can't make digital art. We're saying that that isn't art. And I'm like, cool. Tell me about a surface map,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
we're back in the same place because they can tell you about an algorithmically created piece of art, right? They can tell you all the details in the code and da 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 da. I'm like, great, cool. So Blender is an application.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and get into this, And I think what's happening is everyone just needs more time. Everyone needs to get off their high horse. Of course, ego is like the largest in pride. They will block you from all sorts of progress in the world. I
Yeah.
think releasing
Yes.
ego, releasing pride are the keys to really progressing in the world. And so for me, I think that we need to find more ways to meet in the middle. What we're seeing right now on the NFT side is NFT galleries or NFT companies are opening their own galleries
Yeah.
instead. So Super Rare, I think, just opened up a gallery in New York. Super Chief,
Super Chief. Yeah. It's still in
which was
LA,
already a
New York.
gallery,
Yeah.
but they have one in Japan as well, and I think that one's strictly NFTs. And
Bitforms too. I don't know if you ever heard of Bitforms Gallery, and they
I
were
haven't.
really good. They and I don't count them as technically an NFT gallery because they were focusing on works that's just based in digital media, and
Hmm.
that's where um, when you mentioned like people were saying I'm an NFT artist and whatever, and it's like, no, are you an artist or are you not? You know what I mean? Because an artist
The
can
only question.
create something out of any medium, and Bitforms has been, I really like what they do. They've had a lot of different conceptual works through all types of digital media, and I thought that was just brilliant. So I guess to finish us off, because we got to have way more conversations than this, but I know I always like to keep these to an hour because I don't know the viewers and listeners, they get click off after a while. But
I get
to
it.
finish this one off, um, what do you see is the catalyst for people to understand Web3 as a component of future creativity and not just a standalone fad?
I think what everyone thinks is the answer is just to get a bunch of people to do it and not realize they're doing it. I don't know how much I like that answer because I think it's important that people do know they're doing it in order for them to accept it. I'm worried that, so I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Here, we're the most traveled to city in the country for
Hmm.
weddings. We
Wow.
also are the biggest import in America of slaves in the country in that time period. So there are tons of plantations that exist here.
Yeah.
For people not from here, plantations are just beautiful, almost like parks. They're beautiful homes, there are event spaces, flowers everywhere, et cetera, et cetera. For people who know the history of the city, we know that that is just where slaves worked, you know? And so we have this sort of understanding on one end where people are like, oh man, it's such a beautiful thing. I can't wait to come and see it. And then on the other end, there are people who are like, this has this history that I think needs to be understood, and you should be able to make a decision based on that. I
Yeah.
say all that to say
Yeah.
that I think when people are using crypto and are digging into Web3, it would be nice if they knew, right? And there will be a lot of people who won't use it. But there will be situations in games, for instance, where someone will play a game and they'll get a skin and they'll sell the skin to someone else in the game. And then they'll make the money from the
Money.
skin sale.
Yep.
And they're like, hold on, was that an NFT? Was that skin an NFT? And you're like, yeah, that skin was an NFT. And you just sold it to someone else. And now it's their skin. And now they can use the skin in the game and you can't anymore. And I think when we get to situations like that, where people are, A, everyone is using it, but B, people are realizing that they're using it. Because a lot of
Using
times
it.
what
Yep.
happens is someone does something and then someone runs up to you and you go, hey, did you know that was an NFT? And they
Yeah.
go, what? Stop. I want a refund right now. As opposed to saying like, hey, here's this thing. It's an NFT. It does da da da.
Yeah.
That if you do it like that at the front, I think it's better. I'm worried that the Trojan horse will destroy the city instead of convince
Good
people.
reference.
And so that's kind of my whole thing. But I do think that the key is just um, creating good experiences using NFTs that people want to do. I think we get caught up in this thing where people are making things that people don't want to do. One of the biggest problems with crypto, one of the biggest problems with people in tech, period, is that they try to solve problems that don't exist. And I think that's what we're doing right now. As opposed to looking at existing problems and seeing if there's a way we can fix them, they're looking at the tech, creating solutions, and then saying, hey, don't you have this problem? And everyone's like, no,
Yeah.
we don't have that problem. And that's what's happening. So hopefully we find some just good experiential stuff that we don't hide from them, that we put in front of them and say, like, hey, Fortnite, there is a skin in this that is an NFT. And if you want to
Mhm.
get it, you can, and then you can sell it to other people and you'll make the money. And people go, that actually
That-
doesn't sound too bad.
yeah, that starts
And
changing
so,
some thinking. So,
yeah, so that's
but
that's what I think it is.
But yeah, brother, this will not be the only conversation we'll be having on this one. So before we go out of here, like let the folks know where they can find. I know you mentioned the website blackdave.xyz, but but let them know everywhere you are so we can make sure that we're driving traffic directly to you.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I go by Black Dave Mark II. It's Black Dave MK2 on Instagram, at Black Dave on Twitter because I refuse to give it up to the other Black Dave. I've had it so much longer than him. BlackDave.xyz. Look me up on the music places, Black Dave Mark II, Black Dave MK2. Um, I have released music with a collective of my friends called The Worst Generation on Meta Label. So if you go to metalabel.com, we've put out what we call a master collection, which is all of the music we've released over the last decade that we are just putting out for a quick $10 ask, but please give us a little bit more. As we roll out some new music, we're going to work on a bunch of new music to give everybody this year, but we want to sort of put our canon out there so that people can learn more about us as a collective. It's my friends from South Carolina and I, and
Yes, sir.
we've been doing that for a while. So yeah, those are the best ways to find and support your boy in 2025.
Nice, nice. And thank y'all for joining us for this start of the second season. I was more than honored of this conversation, Black Dave. Like I said, I've been an admirer of this brother for so long, and just the intellect, the forward thinking and everything is just, these are the types of conversations I love having. So just want to thank you, bro, and thank y'all for joining us. And yeah, we'll be back soon. Peace.